The bullet missed Reese Callahan's head by 3 inches. Not because the shooter had bad aim, not because of equipment malfunction, but because in the split second before the trigger pull, Reese saw something in Commander Dalton Mercer's eyes. Something cold, something final, and she moved. The round punched through the plywood wall behind her, leaving a hole the size of a quarter. Not the thumbnail size puncture a blank would make. A real bullet, live ammunition in what was supposed to be a training exercise. 6 Navy SEALs stood in a semicircle around her in the kill house at Coronado Naval Base. The February sun cut through gaps in the walls, painting bars of light across their faces. Dust hung in the air like ground fog. Somewhere outside, a helicopter passed overhead, its rotors a distant thunder. Mercer lowered his M4 carbine slowly. His finger stayed on the trigger. "Fight back, SEAL." His voice carried across the concrete floor, flat and emotionless. "Or are you just a diversity hire?" The other 5 operators stood frozen. Chief Petty Officer Garrett Dunn had his rifle aimed at Reese's center mass. Cody Vance covered the door. Nate Hollister held a flanking position, his weapon low but ready. 2 more operators flanked the corners, their faces hidden behind tactical masks. Reese remained perfectly still. Her own M4 was slung across her chest, unloaded per drill protocol. Her hands were empty. She stood in the middle of the room wearing full kit. 30 pounds of body armor, ammunition pouches, communications gear, all of it designed to keep her alive in combat. None of it would stop a bullet at this range. She looked at Mercer, really looked at him. 41 years old, 15 years of combat experience carved into the lines around his eyes. Silver creeping into his temples. 3 deployments to Afghanistan, 2 to Iraq, a Navy Cross on his service record, a man who had earned every piece of brass on his uniform through blood and fire, a man who had just tried to kill her. Reese smiled, not a nervous smile, not a defensive gesture, something else entirely, something that made Dunn shift his weight, something that made Vance's finger slide off his trigger guard. It was the smile of someone who knew something the room didn't. "Live rounds, Commander." Reese's voice was conversational, almost friendly. "That's a bold choice for a training exercise." Mercer's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The burn marks on the wall behind me." Reese still hadn't moved. Blanks don't leave powder residue at 15 feet, and that hole is too clean for a training round. She tilted her head slightly. Her eyes never left Mercer's face. "So either someone made a mistake loading magazines this morning," she continued, "or this isn't a drill anymore." The silence stretched. Outside, the helicopter faded into distance. Someone in another building was running a concrete saw, the high whine muted by distance in walls. "Last chance, Callahan." Mercer's voice dropped lower. "Fight back or stand down." Reese's smile widened. Then she moved. Her hand went to the flashbang grenade on her chest rig, the one piece of live equipment they'd been issued for the drill. She pulled the pin in one smooth motion and threw it not at the seals, but at the ceiling junction where 2 walls met. The grenade detonated in midair, 170 decibels of sound, 8 million candela of light. The confined space magnified everything. Men who had survived IED blasts and firefights stumbled backward, their weapons dropping to low ready as their vision whited out. Reese had already turned away, eyes closed, hands over ears. She'd counted the 1.5-second fuse in her head. When the blast came, she was ready. She moved through the aftermath like water through cracks. Dunn first. He was closest, still trying to blink away the spots in his vision. Reese stepped inside his guard, trapped his rifle against his chest with one hand, and drove her elbow into his solar plexus. Not hard enough to break ribs, but enough to fold him. The rifle came free as he dropped. Vance next. He was backing toward the door, weapon up, but searching for targets. Reese swept his legs from behind, rode him down, and pinned the rifle with her knee. A strike to the nerve cluster behind his ear, and he went limp. Hollister was turning, bringing his weapon around. Reese rolled, came up inside his arc, and executed a perfect Krav Maga disarm. Redirect, control, strip. His M4 clattered across the floor. Two more operators had recovered faster than the others. They charged together, forgetting their weapons, going for a tackle. Reese sidestepped the first, used his momentum against him, and sent him crashing into the plywood wall. The second she caught with a palm strike to the sternum that stopped him cold. 40 seconds, 5 SEALs down. That left Mercer. He'd kept his feet, maintained his weapon, was already acquiring her through the dissipating smoke. But Reese had moved again, circling using the fallen SEALs as obstacles. She came up behind him. Her hand closed around his rifle barrel, pushing it toward the ceiling. They stood there for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Mercer's finger was still on the trigger. One twitch and the rifle would fire into the ceiling, but Reese's grip was iron, and her other hand had found the pistol on his hip, a Sig Sauer P226, standard SEAL sidearm. She drew it in one fluid motion and stepped back, putting 6 feet between them. The pistol was pointed at Mercer's center mass, her finger indexed along the frame, not on the trigger. Professional, controlled. "Blanks don't leave burn marks, Commander," she said again. Her breathing was steady. Her hands didn't shake. Someone loaded live ammunition into training weapons. Someone tried to make this look like an accident. Mercer lowered his rifle. His face was unreadable. "You've got no proof." "I've got a bullet hole in the wall." Reese's voice stayed level. "I've got witnesses, and I've got this." She ejected the magazine from his rifle with her free hand, caught it, held it up to the light. The brass casings gleamed. Real ammunition, not blanks. "So now," Reese continued, "we have 2 options. Option 1, I report this to the Master Chief. Naval Criminal Investigative Service gets involved. Everyone in this room gets interviewed under oath about why live rounds made it into a training exercise." She paused. "Or option 2, you tell me right now who wants me dead and why." The concrete saw had stopped. The world had gone quiet except for the ragged breathing of 5 SEALs on the floor and 2 standing. Mercer's eyes were cold. "You don't know what you're starting, Callahan. I know someone just tried to kill me in a controlled environment." Reese's voice hardened. "I know that takes planning, authorization, and I know you're either part of it or you're covering for someone who is." She lowered the pistol slightly, though it never stopped pointing at his chest. "I also know," she added quietly, "that my mother was killed by people who made it look like an accident. So when someone tries the same trick on me," that smile again, the one that made something cold slide down Mercer's spine, "I take it personally." 3 months earlier, the sun had been shining. Reese remembered that detail with perfect clarity. The way the San Diego morning light hit the Pacific Ocean, turning it into a sheet of hammered silver. The way it reflected off the Navy SEAL trident being pinned to her uniform. The golden eagle clutching an anchor, trident, and flintlock pistol, symbol of the brotherhood she'd just joined. The crowd at the BUD/its graduation ceremony numbered in the hundreds. Families, active duty SEALs, Navy brass, and unfortunately media. Cameras everywhere, reporters with microphones, news vans with satellite dishes. Because Reese Callahan wasn't just graduating basic underwater demolition/SEAL training, she was the first woman to do it. Class 384 had started with 87 candidates. They had ended with 12. Reese was the only woman who'd made it through Hell Week. 5.5 days of continuous training with a maximum of 4 hours of sleep total. 5 days of freezing ocean water, log drills, boat carries, and instructors whose job was to make you quit. 250 candidates had quit during Reese's Hell Week alone. The bell they rang to drop out had sounded like a funeral dirge by day 3. Reese had never touched it. She completed every evolution, passed every test, met every standard that the men had met. No modifications, no exceptions. And now she stood on the grinder, the legendary concrete courtyard at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, while a rear admiral talked about history and progress in breaking barriers. Reese wasn't listening. She was watching the active duty SEALs in the crowd, the operators who'd come to see the graduation, the men who would be her peers, her teammates, her brothers in arms. Their faces told a different story than the admiral's words. Some looked curious, some looked skeptical, some looked openly hostile. And one man, Commander Dalton Mercer, looked at her like she was a problem that needed solving. The ceremony ended with the traditional ringing of the bell, but this time it wasn't candidates quitting. It was celebration. Each graduate rang it 3 times. When Reese's turn came, she gripped the rope and pulled. The sound echoed across the grinder, across the beach, across the base, a sound that said, "I made it. I belong here. I earned this." But the looks from some of the veteran SEALs said otherwise. After the ceremony, Reese found a quiet spot near the beach, just her and the sound of waves hitting sand. The media had finally been corralled elsewhere. The families were at the reception. She'd slipped away with practiced ease, the same way she'd learned to move unseen during patrol training. She pulled a small object from her pocket, a compass, old brass, worn smooth by decades of use. Her grandmother had given it to her the night before Hell Week started. "This belonged to your mother," her grandmother had said, her voice quiet, fragile. She carried it on every assignment, said it kept her oriented when everything else went to hell. Reese opened it now, just as she had that night. The needle swung true north, and on the inside of the lid, engraved in small, precise letters, were words that had become her mantra. "When they mock you, smile. When they attack you, win." Her mother's handwriting. Reese traced the letters with her fingertip. She had never known much about her mother's work. Vivian Callahan, military intelligence, died in 1993 when Reese was 6 years old. The official story was simple: training accident, parachute malfunction at Fort Bragg, tragic but not uncommon in high-risk military training. But Reese's grandmother had never believed it. In quiet moments, late at night, she'd hint at things: dangerous work, classified operations, people who might have wanted Vivian silenced. Reese had been too young to understand then. She understood now. "Your mother would have been proud." The voice came from behind her, deep, gravelly, familiar in a way that didn't make sense because Reese had never heard it before. She turned. Colonel Beckett Shaw stood 10 feet away wearing civilian clothes, jeans, a button-down shirt, boots that had seen better days. He was 64 but looked 50, 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, close-cropped silver hair, and eyes the color of gunmetal. A scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, courtesy of shrapnel from a grenade in Grenada back in 1983. "Colonel Shaw." Reese came to attention automatically. "At ease, Lieutenant." Shaw smiled. "I'm retired, remember? Been a civilian for 3 years now." Old habits. Good habits. Shaw stepped closer, his boots crunching on sand. "I knew your father, you know. Nathan Callahan. Hell of a pilot. We did a joint op in '89, Marines and Air Force coordinating close air support in Panama. He saved my life twice in 1 week." Reese nodded. She'd heard the story. Her father had died in Operation Desert Storm in 1991, shot down over Iraq. She'd been 4 years old. The memories were fragments. His laugh, his hands lifting her onto his shoulders, the smell of his flight jacket. "He'd be proud too," Shaw continued, "seeing you pin on that trident." "Did you know my mother?" The question came out before Reese could stop it. Shaw's expression shifted. Something guarded slid behind his eyes. Vivian, yes, I knew her. The official record says she died in a training accident. Fort Bragg, 1993. Parachute malfunction during a night jump. That's what the record says. But that's not what happened. It wasn't a question. Shaw studied her for a long moment, then looked out at the ocean. Your mother was Army, he said finally. Military intelligence. Worked with some people who didn't wear uniforms. Did some things that never made it into official reports. CIA? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Shaw turned back to her. What do you know about your mother's work? Nothing, Reese admitted. My grandmother raised me after she died. She never talked about it. Said she served her country, and that was enough. Good people, Shaw nodded slowly. Smart people. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a business card, held it out. Heavy stock, embossed numbers. No name, no company. Your mother made me promise something before she died, he said. That if you ever followed her path, if you ever joined the military and started asking questions, I'd be there to help you find answers. Reese took the card. She knew. Reese said slowly, she knew someone might come after me. She knew that the people who killed her were patient, that they'd wait, watch, and if her daughter ever got too close to the truth, they'd act. Shaw's voice was grave. That's why I'm here. Not just to congratulate you, but to warn you. Warn me about what? Shaw looked at her with something that might have been sadness, or might have been regret. Because you're about to step into a world where not everyone wants you to succeed, he said. And because your mother had enemies, powerful enemies, the kind that don't forget, the kind that hold grudges for decades. Is that why someone will try to kill me? When it happens, Shaw's jaw tightened. When someone tries to make it look like an accident, you call that number, day or night, and I'll tell you everything about your mother, about her work, about why she died. Why not tell me now? Because you don't believe it yet. You're still hoping the official story is true, that it was just an accident, that your mother wasn't murdered. Shaw started to walk away, then stopped. One more thing, Lieutenant. Your mother had a technique she used in the field, something that made her legendary among the people who knew her work. What technique? Shaw's scarred face creased into something that wasn't quite a smile. She smiled, he said. Right before she struck, always smiled. It was psychological warfare. Let the target know they'd already lost before the fight even started. He paused. The ghost smile, they called it, because by the time you saw it, you were already dead. Then he was gone, walking up the beach toward the parking lot, leaving Reese alone with the waves and a business card and questions that had no answers. Yet. SEAL Team 9 operated out of a nondescript building on Coronado that looked like every other military structure on base. Concrete block construction, reinforced doors, windows that didn't open, the kind of place that housed classified materials and people who did classified things. Reese reported at 0600 on a Monday morning in late November. The air was cool, the sky still dark. She wore her Navy working uniform, the blue digital camouflage that SEALs rarely wore in the field but were required to wear on base. The team room was on the second floor. 20 by 30 feet of organized case, gun racks along one wall holding M4 carbines, HK-416, and specialized weapons. Gear lockers with names stenciled on them, a conference table covered in maps and satellite photos, whiteboards with tactical diagrams, computer workstations running encrypted communications, and 6 men who stopped talking the moment Reese walked through the door. Commander Dalton Mercer stood at the head of the conference table, 41 years old, 6'2", the build of someone who'd spent 2 decades carrying heavy loads over long distances. His brown hair was regulation length. His jaw was square. His eyes were the kind of blue that it looked cold even when he smiled. He wasn't smiling now. Lieutenant Callahan. His voice was flat, professional, empty of emotion. Welcome to Team 9. Thank you, sir. These are your teammates. Mercer gestured to the other men in the room. Chief Petty Officer Garrett Dunn, 15 years in the teams, 3 Bronze Stars, Team Operations Chief. Dunn nodded. He was shorter than Mercer but wider, built like a fire hydrant with a shaved head and forearms like steel cables. His handshake was firm but brief. His eyes lingered on Reese a moment longer than necessary. Not hostile, assessing. Petty Officer First Class Cody Vance, designated marksman. Vance was average height, average build, with dark hair and darker eyes. He looked at Reese with open skepticism, his arms crossed over his chest. He didn't offer his hand. Petty Officer First Class Nate Hollister, medic and communications. Hollister stood apart from the others near the window. Quiet, compact, eyes that missed nothing. He nodded once, a precise movement that conveyed acknowledgement without warmth. Mercer introduced 3 more. Breacher, heavy weapons, intelligence analyst. Each man that studied Reese the way someone might study an equation they couldn't solve. You'll be assigned to second squad, Mercer continued. That's Dunn, Vance, and Hollister. Questions? Reese had about 100 questions. She asked none of them. No, sir. Good. Mercer picked up a folder from the table and held it out. This is your training schedule for the next 6 weeks. Weapons qualifications, close quarters battle, advanced dive operations, high altitude parachute insertions. You'll meet the same standards as everyone else. No modifications, no exceptions. I wouldn't expect any, sir. Something flickered across Mercer's face. Not quite anger, not quite a contempt. Something in between. We'll see, he said. Gear up, Pete Dye, tea in 30 minutes. We run every morning, 6 miles, sub 40-minute pace. If you fall behind, you do it again alone. He turned away, dismissing her. Reese found her locker, the only one without a name stenciled on it yet. Someone had left a combination lock on the handle. Inside was standard SEAL kit, body armor, helmet, weapons, cleaning supplies, uniforms, everything she needed except acceptance. She changed quickly, aware of the eyes watching her. Not overtly, but she could feel it, the weight of judgment, the assessment, men wondering if she belonged here, if she could carry her weight, if she would get them killed. The run was brutal, not because of the distance or the pace. Reese had been running 6-minute miles since Bud/S, but because Mercer set a pace that was just barely sustainable. 6.5-minute miles with full kit through soft sand along the beach. No breaks. By mile 3, Vance was breathing hard. By mile 4, Hollister was struggling. By mile 5, even Dunn looked strained. Reese kept pace with Mercer at the front. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she didn't fall back, didn't slow, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her fail. They finished in 38 minutes. Mercer checked his watch, nodded once, walked away without a word. Dunn stayed behind, hands on his knees, catching his breath. Not bad, Lieutenant, he said between gulps of air, for a first day. Thanks, Chief. Dunn straightened up, looked at her with something that might have been respect. Word of advice, he said. The commander doesn't like change, doesn't like politics, and he really doesn't like the attention you brought to the teams with all that media circus at graduation. I didn't ask for the attention. Doesn't matter, you got it anyway. Dunn wiped sweat from his face. So now you're here, and we have to figure out if you're a SEAL or a headline. I'm a SEAL, Chief. We'll see, Way, Dunn said. It was an echo of Mercer's words. We'll see. The sabotage started small. Day 3, Reese's dive regulator malfunctioned during pool training. The first stage flooded, filling her mouthpiece with water. She had to emergency ascend from 30 feet, blowing bubbles to prevent lung expansion injury. Not life-threatening in a pool with safety divers, but it would have been fatal in the ocean. The equipment technician found sand in the regulator valve. Impossible to get there by accident. Day 7. Her parachute rig was packed incorrectly. She discovered it during pre-jump inspection. The main canopy lines were twisted in a way that would have caused a malfunction on deployment. At 15,000 feet, that meant emergency procedures in a reserve chute deployment, or death. Day 12. Someone loosened the bolts on her climbing harness. She noticed during gear check before a fast rope exercise. If she'd rappelled from the helicopter without checking, the harness would have separated under load. 50-foot fall under concrete. Reese reported none of it. She fixed the problems, checked her gear 3 times before every evolution, stayed alert, stayed alive. But she watched, and she learned. Vance was the most obvious. He made comments about quotas and political correctness whenever she was in earshot, excluded her from team conversations, made sure she knew she wasn't welcome. Dunn was professional but distant. He gave orders, she followed them, and that was the extent of their relationship. But sometimes she caught him watching Mercer with an expression she couldn't quite read. Something like doubt. Hollister was harder to read. He watched her constantly, but his expression gave nothing away, neither hostile nor friendly, just observant. But Mercer was the real problem. He pushed her harder than anyone else, made her redo evolutions that she'd completed successfully, assigned her to the most dangerous positions during training, put her in situations designed to break her. She didn't break. 6 weeks into her assignment during a live-fire close-quarters battle drill, Mercer changed the scenario without warning. They were clearing a kill house, a training structure designed to simulate urban combat. Reese was point man, leading second squad through multiple rooms. The objectives were simple: clear each room, neutralize paper targets, protect the hostages represented by cardboard cutouts. Standard stuff. They'd done it 100 times. But this time, when Reese entered the third room, she found Mercer standing in the center with his weapon raised, and the expression on his face told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't training anymore. This was a test of a different kind, the kind where failure meant a body bag in a flag-draped coffin, the kind where survival meant understanding that someone on SEAL Team 9 wanted her gone. And as Mercer's finger tightened on the trigger, as the other members of Second Squad filed in behind her with their weapons raised, as she saw the cold calculation in their eyes, Reese Callahan smiled, because she knew something they didn't. She knew that her mother had faced men like this before, had survived them, had beaten them, and her mother's daughter was about to do the same. The investigation took 48 hours. Naval Criminal Investigative Service descended on Coronado like a storm. 2 agents in dark suits interviewed every member of SEAL Team 9 separately. They examined the kill house, photographed the bullet hole, collected shell casings, ran ballistics. They pulled security footage, checked ammunition logs, reviewed training protocols. By Thursday afternoon, they had their answer. Equipment malfunction, clerical error. Live rounds mixed with blanks during a rushed resupply operation. No criminal intent, no conspiracy, just bad luck and human error. The agents closed their notebooks and left. Reese sat in the Master Chief's office and listened to the official conclusion with her hands folded in her lap and her face expressionless. When they finished, she said nothing, just nodded, stood, saluted, walked out. She didn't believe a word of it. That night, she sat alone in her apartment off base and stared at the business card Colonel Shaw had given her 3 months ago. Heavy stock, embossed numbers, no name. She dialed. He answered on the second ring. Shaw, it's Reese Callahan. A pause, then, I've been expecting this call. Someone tried to kill you. Not a question, a statement. How did you know? Because I've been watching. And because over 30 years ago, someone tried to kill your mother the exact same way. Training accident. That wasn't an accident. Reese's hand tightened on the phone. Who? Meet me tomorrow. 800. There's a coffee shop on Orange Avenue, 3 blocks from base. La Maria. Come alone. The line went dead. Reese lay in the dark and thought about her mother. Not the official story she'd memorized, not the dates and places, but the real memories. The smell of her mother's perfume, the sound of her laugh, the way she would check Reese's room 3 times before leaving for a business trip, the way she never came back from that last one. Reese had been 6 years old enough to remember, too young to understand. Now she understood, and tomorrow she would start getting answers. La Maria was a small place with outdoor seating and ocean views. Shaw sat at a corner table wearing jeans and a leather jacket, 2 cups of coffee already waiting. Reese slid into the seat across from him. "Thank you for coming," Shaw said. "You said someone tried to kill my mother." Direct, like her. Shaw pushed 1 coffee cup toward Reese. "How much did your grandmother tell you about Vivian's work?" "Nothing. She said she served her country in military intelligence. That was all." "They were protecting you." Shaw pulled a manila folder from inside his jacket. Old, worn, the kind of folder that had spent decades in a filing cabinet. "Your mother wasn't just military intelligence. She worked for an organization that doesn't officially exist. Did things that never made it into any record." He opened the folder. Inside were photographs, black and white. A woman in her early 30s with dark hair and sharp eyes. Reese's mother, but not the mother she remembered from family photos. This woman wore tactical gear, carried weapons, stood in front of helicopters and military installations that Reese didn't recognize. "Operation Ghost Veil," Shaw said. "Honduras, 1987. Soviet arms dealers were funneling weapons to leftist insurgents throughout Central America. The CIA needed someone to infiltrate the network, someone unexpected." He tapped one photograph. Vivian standing next to a man in civilian clothes. Older, weathered, Slavic features. Gregor Kedrov, former GRU officer. By 1987, he was the primary arms broker for Soviet operations in Central America. Operated out of an old military compound in the Honduran jungle. Paranoid, brilliant, ruthless. And my mother infiltrated his organization. Not just infiltrated, she became his most trusted confidant. Shaw pulled out another photo. This one showed Vivian and Kedrov at a dinner table. They were laughing. She spent 6 months inside his network, gathered intelligence on weapon shipments, supply routes, financial networks, single-handedly disrupted Soviet operations across 3 countries. Reese studied the photograph. Her mother looked happy, at ease. What happened? The mission succeeded. She extracted with intelligence that changed the trajectory of American operations in the region. But her handler, Shaw paused, a man codenamed Ironside, had ordered her to do one more thing before she left. Kill Kedrov. Exactly. Eliminate the target, tie up loose ends, standard protocol for deep cover operations. Shaw's jaw tightened. But your mother refused. She'd spent 6 months with Kedrov, knew him, understood him, saw that he was just a man trying to survive in a world that had left him behind. So she let him live. Reese's blood went cold immediately. She let him live, and her handler was furious. Threatened to end her career, have her prosecuted for insubordination. But your mother had allies, people who respected what she'd accomplished. They forced a compromise. She'd be retired quietly. No prosecution, no scandal, but she'd never work in intelligence again. Shaw pulled out another photograph. This one showed a man in military uniform. Official ceremony, distinguished service ribbons. Colonel Raymond Mercer, codenamed Ironside, your mother's handler during Ghost Veil. Reese felt the world tilt. Mercer, she whispered. The commander of Team 9 is Dalton Mercer, Raymond Mercer's son. Shaw's voice was quiet, heavy with the weight of over 30 years of secrets. That was 1988. Your mother came home, tried to build a normal life, married your father, had you, worked as a language instructor at Fort Bragg. His voice dropped. But someone didn't think that was enough punishment. In 1988, they tried to kill her, made it look like a vehicle accident, brake failure on a mountain road. She survived, barely, broken ribs, punctured lung, 3 months in the hospital, but she survived. Reese's hands were trembling. She set down the coffee cup before it spilled. And then your father died, Shaw continued quietly. 1991, Operation Desert Storm, shot down over Iraq. Your mother was devastated, lost. He paused. And in 1993, someone decided to finish what they'd started 5 years earlier. Training accident at Fort Bragg. Parachute malfunction. By the time anyone realized what had happened, she was gone. The coffee had gone cold. Reese didn't touch it. Who ordered it? The file was sealed. Everyone involved is either dead or retired. But I know this. Shaw leaned forward. Colonel Raymond Mercer was present at Fort Bragg the day your mother died. He personally inspected her parachute equipment. He signed off on the training exercise, and he made sure the investigation was closed within 2 weeks. Reese stared at the photograph of Raymond Mercer, distinguished, decorated, dead since 2010, but his son was very much alive. Dalton Mercer knows, she said. He knows what his father did, and he's trying to finish the job. That's what I believe. Shaw closed the folder, pushed it across the table. Everything I know about your mother's death, everyone who had motive, everyone who had means, everyone who might have wanted her silenced. He paused. I've been carrying this since your mother died, over 30 years, waiting for someone who cared enough to do something about it. Reese opened the folder. Lists of names, CIA personnel, military officers, dates, locations, a web of conspiracy that her mother had been caught in. Why are you giving this to me? Because I owed your mother my life, twice over. Shaw's expression softened. And because she made me promise that if you ever followed her path, I'd be there to help you find answers. He stood, walked to the door. One more thing, he said. The CIA has a mission for you, Honduras. Kedrov is still alive, 72 years old, dying of cancer, but he still runs his network. And he has something that could get a lot of Americans killed. What? Stolen military encryption device, Singar's codes that could compromise secure communications across entire theaters of operation. Shaw met her eyes. They want someone to infiltrate his compound, recover the device, and the support team for the mission. Reese understood before he finished. SEAL Team 9. Keep your enemies close, Lieutenant. In the jungle, it's easier to see who wants you dead than it is here at Coronado. Then he was gone. Reese sat alone for another 20 minutes, turning the folder over in her hands, feeling the weight of decisions and history in her mother's ghost. Then she went back to base. The briefing room was classified space. No windows, reinforced walls, digital locks. Inside, SEAL Team 9 sat around a conference table, looking various degrees of confused and annoyed. Mercer stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, jaw tight. A woman in a dark suit stood next to him, 50-something, short hair, CIA badge on her belt. Lieutenant Callahan, the woman said, I'm Deputy Director Harlow. Please have a seat. Reese took the empty chair at the far end of the table. 5 sets of eyes tracked her movements. Mercer's expression was unreadable. Gentlemen, Harlow continued, you've been assigned to provide quick reaction force support for a high-priority CIA operation in Honduras. Timeline is 72 hours. Mission duration 96 hours. Objective, infiltration and extraction of a high-value intelligence target. She clicked a remote. A projector lit up the wall screen. Satellite photos of jungle, a compound, buildings, guard towers. Target is Gregor Kedrov, former Soviet GRU officer, current international arms dealer. He's in possession of stolen U.S. military encryption codes. Your mission is to position 5 miles from his compound, stand by as quick reaction force, and provide backup extraction if the primary infiltration fails. Dunn raised a hand. Primary infiltration? Who's going in? Harlow looked at Reese. Lieutenant Callahan will infiltrate Kedrov's compound undercover as a potential buyer. She'll locate the encryption device, signal when extraction is viable, and exfil with the target package. Silence. Then Vance laughed. Not humor, disbelief. You're sending an analyst into a hostile compound alone. That's the plan. Lieutenant Callahan is a Navy SEAL. Harlow's voice was sharp, fully qualified, and she has specific skill sets that make her ideal for this mission. What skill sets? Mercer's voice was flat. She's been on the team for 2 months. 0 combat deployments. 0 real-world operations. And you want to send her solo into a hostile environment against a target with 200 armed men. The mission profile requires a female operative, Harlow said. Kedrov doesn't trust male agents. Lieutenant Callahan is the only qualified candidate available in the required time frame. This is insane, Vance shook his head. She's going to get herself killed, and when it goes wrong, we're the ones who have to clean it up. Reese spoke for the first time. I accept the mission. Every head turned. Lieutenant, Mercer started. I accept. Reese repeated. I understand the risks, I understand the timeline, and I'm ready. Harlow nodded. Good. Mission planning starts immediately. Wheels up at 0600 Sunday. Questions? Yes. Mercer stood. I want to speak with Lieutenant Callahan privately. Harlow considered. You have 10 minutes. Everyone else dismissed. The team filed out. Hollister was last, pausing at the door to glance back at Reese. Something in his expression. Concern, maybe. Or warning. Then they were alone, Reese and Mercer in the satellite photos of Honduran jungle. Mercer walked to the window, stared out at nothing for 30 seconds. This mission is a mistake, he said finally. It's the assignment. It's a death sentence. He paused. But maybe that's the point. Reese's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means some people at the agency have long memories, and your mother made enemies who are still alive. Mercer turned to face her. Enemies who might see you walking into that jungle as a convenient way to tie up loose ends. You know about my mother. I know more than you think. Mercer's hands clenched. My father worked with her, Colonel Raymond Mercer, Army Intelligence, codenamed Ironside. He was her handler during Operation Ghostvale. The air left Reese's lungs. Your father was the man who ordered her to kill Kedrov, the man who threatened her career when she refused. The man who, Mercer's voice broke, who spent 10 years trying to find out who killed her. It destroyed him. Paranoia, alcoholism. He died in 2010 without answers. He walked to his briefcase, pulled out a folder, set it on the table. But he kept files, notes, theories. He pushed it toward Reese. Everything my father knew about your mother's death. Everyone who had motive. Everyone who had means. Everyone who might have wanted her silenced. Reese stared at the folder. Her mind raced. This was unexpected. Mercer offering evidence, claiming his father wanted justice. The same man Shaw said ordered her mother's death. One of them was lying. But which one? Why are you giving this to me? Because my father was a lot of things, hard, unforgiving. But he wasn't a murderer, and he respected your mother, even when she disobeyed him. Mercer's voice was quiet. He wanted justice for her. I want to give him that, even if he's not here to see it. Reese opened the folder. More names, more dates, more evidence, a parallel investigation to Shaw's. So you don't want me dead? No, but I think someone does. And I think this mission is designed to put you in a position where that can happen. Mercer met her eyes. When you're in that compound, when things go wrong, and they will go wrong, you remember something? He paused. Your mother's specialty wasn't shooting or fighting. It was making targets think they'd already lost before the battle started. The ghost smile. My father mentioned it in his notes, said it was the most effective psychological weapon he'd ever seen. Targets would surrender without a shot fired because Vivian made them believe escape was impossible. He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the handle. Use it because in the jungle, against 200 armed men, psychology might be the only weapon that saves your life. He left. Reese sat alone with the two folders. Shaw's investigation, Mercer's father's investigation. Two men trying to solve the same mystery from opposite ends. But which one was telling the truth? And which one wanted her dead? 72 hours until Wheels Up. The flight to Honduras took 6 hours. C-130 transport, no windows, canvas seats. The aircraft's engines were a constant roar that made conversation impossible without shouting. Reese sat at the far end, reviewing mission documents for the 100th time. Cover identity, backstory, Kedrov's known associates, compound layout, extraction protocols. Across from her, Hollister watched with those quiet, assessing eyes. Dunn checked weapons. Vance sharpened a knife with methodical precision. And Mercer sat forward, elbows on knees, studying a map of the operational area with the intensity of someone planning a war. The aircraft began its descent. They hit the ground at a small airstrip in northern Honduras just after midnight. Humid air, insect sounds, the smell of vegetation and rain. Two vehicles waited, unmarked SUVs, no drivers, keys in the ignition. The team loaded gear in silence. Dunn drove the lead vehicle. Mercer drove the second. Reese rode with Mercer. They drove for 3 hours on roads that degraded from paved to gravel to dirt. The jungle pressed close on both sides. No streetlights, no traffic, just darkness and the twin cones of headlights cutting through humidity. At 0330, they stopped. The vehicles pulled off the road into a clearing. No buildings, no people, just jungle and stars and the sound of nocturnal creatures going about their business. This is the staging point, Mercer said. Compound is 20 miles northeast. Team will move to position at first light. Callahan makes contact at 1400. They set up a perimeter. Dunn and Vance established communications. Hollister unpacked medical supplies. Reese checked her gear one final time. Civilian clothes, jeans, t-shirt, leather jacket despite the heat. The kind of outfit an international arms buyer might wear. She carried no weapons, no visible communications gear. But she had a micro earpiece hidden deep in her ear canal, a GPS tracker injected under the skin of her shoulder, and both of her mother's compasses in her jacket pocket. Hollister approached as she finished. "You speak Russian?" he asked. First words he'd spoken directly to her since the briefing. "Some enough. Kedrov will test you, language, culture, family history. The cover story needs to be perfect." "It is," Hollister studied her. "You're not afraid." Not a question, an observation. "Should I be?" "Yes, this is dangerous, more dangerous than they told you." He paused. "I know men like Kedrov, former GRU, former Soviet intelligence. They don't survive this long by being trusting. Then I'll have to be convincing." "It's not about convincing. It's about understanding." Hollister pulled something from his pocket, a small book, worn, Russian poetry, Pushkin. Kedrov's generation memorized these in school. If you want him to trust you, quote Pushkin, make him remember the country he lost. Reese took the book. Thank you. Hollister nodded, started to walk away, stopped. Your mother, he said. I read about her after the briefing. She was good at this, the infiltration, the psychology, but in the end, someone still killed her. I know. Then you also know that sometimes being good isn't enough. Sometimes the enemy wins anyway. His eyes were serious. Don't let them win with you. He disappeared into the darkness. Reese sat alone with the poetry book and her mother's compasses in the weight of what was coming. At 0600, the sun rose over the jungle. The team ate MREs in silence, checked weapons, ran communications tests. At 0700, they moved out. Dunn led, Vance and Hollister in the middle. Two more operators at the rear. Mercer beside Dunn, navigating. Reese stayed back. She'd separate from the team 5 miles from target. Move in alone. The jungle was alive. Birds, monkeys, insects, everywhere. The heat built as the sun climbed. Humidity turned the air to soup. They moved slowly, carefully. This wasn't enemy territory exactly, but it wasn't friendly either. Local police were corrupt. Cartels operated freely, and Kedrov's network had eyes everywhere. At 1100, they reached the split point. Dunn marked it on GPS, 5.3 miles from the compound. Heavy jungle coverage. Good concealment. The team would hold here. Wait for Reese's signal. Move only if extraction became necessary. Reese said nothing, just nodded to Dunn, nodded to Hollister, looked at Mercer for a long moment. Then she walked into the jungle alone. The compound appeared after 2 hours of careful approach. Guard towers, concrete walls, buildings visible through breaks in the foliage, just like the satellite photos. Reese found the contact point, an old Soviet-era radio tower, abandoned but still standing. At its base, a panel of corrugated metal painted red. She placed a small white stone on the panel, the signal. Then she waited. 20 minutes later, 2 men emerged from the jungle. Locals, armed with AK-47s, young, nervous. They spoke rapid Spanish. Reese responded in slow, careful Russian. I'm here to see Gregor Kedrov. He's expecting me. The men looked at each other, then one pulled out a satellite phone, made a call, spoke quickly, listened. He nodded to Reese. Come. They walked her deeper into the jungle, another mile. Then the compound gates appeared, 12 feet high, steel reinforced, guards at the entrance, more guards visible on the walls. The gates opened. Reese walked through. Inside was organized buildings in various states of repair, vehicles parked haphazardly, men everywhere, dozens of them, all armed, all watching her with suspicion and curiosity. She was led to the largest building, Soviet-era construction, concrete blocks, small windows. A relic from the 1980s when this had been a legitimate military outpost. Inside was cooler, darker, the smell of old concrete and gun oil. A man sat at a desk in what had once been a command center. Maps on the walls, radio equipment, computers running encrypted communications. Gregor Kedrov. He looked older than his 72 years. Thin, gray. The cancer was eating him from the inside. But his eyes were sharp, alert. The eyes of someone who'd survived decades in a business where most people died young. He studied Reese for a long moment. Then he spoke in perfect, unaccented Russian. You remind me of someone, he said. A woman I knew long ago. Reese smiled, not nervous, not ingratiating, the ghost smile. People tell me I look like my mother, she said in Russian. Perhaps you knew her. Kedrov's expression shifted. Something that might have been recognition, or fear, or longing. Perhaps, he said quietly. What is your name, child? Anna Kedrova, your brother's daughter from Moscow. I've come to discuss business. My brother died 20 years ago. I know, my mother raised me alone, but she told me that if I ever needed help, I should find you. Reese took a step closer. She said you were the only man in this business who kept his word. Kedrov's hands trembled slightly. He placed them flat on the desk to steady them. What did your mother tell you about me? That you loved Russia but couldn't go back. That you helped people who needed helping. And that you never forgot your friends. The old man's eyes glistened. Sit, he said. Please, sit. Reese sat. Behind her the door opened. Heavy footsteps. A man entered her peripheral vision. Tall, broad, moving with the controlled aggression of someone who'd spent a lifetime hurting people. Konstantin, Kedrov said. Meet our guest. She claims to be my niece. Konstantin Resnick circled Reese like a predator assessing prey. 50-something, former Spetsnaz based on his bearing, scars on his knuckles, a knife on his belt worn smooth from use. She looks American, Resnick said in Russian. His accent was Moscow, but harder. My mother moved to New York when I was young, Reese replied without looking at him. I grew up there, but I was born in Russia. Prove it. Reese reached slowly into her jacket. Resnick's hand went to his knife. She withdrew a small photograph, set it on the desk. The photo showed a young woman holding an infant. The woman had Reese's eyes. Behind them, a Moscow street was visible. Snow falling. My mother, Reese said. And me. Winter of 1997. Kedrov picked up the photograph. His hands trembled. What was your mother's name? He asked. Irina Kedrova, your brother Victor's wife. She took me to America after he died, changed our names, started over. The lies came easily. The CIA had built a legend so detailed that it had birth certificates, school records, even a grave in Moscow for Viktor Kedrov, a man who'd never existed. But Gregor Kedrov didn't know that. He stared at the photograph like it was a window into the past. Victor, he said softly, I haven't spoken that name in 20 years. He spoke of you often, said you were the strong one, the survivor. He said that in the letters he wrote before he died. My mother kept them. She said I should read them when I was old enough to understand what family means. Kedrov set the photograph down gently, reverently. And now you're here, in the jungle, claiming to be family. His voice hardened. What do you want, child? The same thing Victor wanted, the same thing you've built here. Reese leaned forward. A way to survive when governments fail, when borders close, when the world forgets about people like us. You want to join my organization. I want to do business. I have access to buyers in Eastern Europe, people who need what you sell, and I need a supplier I can trust. Resnick laughed, sharp, bitter. She comes from nowhere and wants access to our network. This is CIA. Has to be. Reese turned to face him for the first time, looked up slowly, assessed him the way he'd assessed her. If I were CIA, she said calmly, I wouldn't walk in here alone. I'd bring a team, drones, satellites. I'd have you all in body bags before breakfast. Maybe you're the bait. Maybe they're waiting for a signal. Then search me. Resnick's eyes narrowed. What? Reese stood, removed her jacket, tossed it to Resnick. Search me. Search the jacket. Check for wires, trackers, weapons, whatever you need to feel safe. Resnick caught the jacket, looked at Kedrov. The old man nodded. Resnick searched her thoroughly. Professional, clinical. He found nothing. Because the GPS tracker was injected under her skin, and the earpiece was so small registered as part of her ear canal to casual inspection. He searched the jacket, found both compasses. What are these, compasses? One was my grandfather's. He carried it during the war. The other was my mother's, a gift from someone important to her. Resnick opened the first compass. His expression shifted. Something that might have been curiosity. He opened the second compass. Read the inscription on the back of the case. For Vivian, come home safe. GK, his face went pale. He showed both compasses to Kedrov. The old man's face went white. His hands shook as he took them. I've seen these before, Kedrov whispered. Not just seen, I gave this one to someone. The American woman from 1987. She carried it every day. He looked up at Reese. His eyes were wet. You couldn't have known that unless the silence in the room became absolute. Reese made a decision, a calculated risk. The truth, or close enough to it, was her only play now. My mother's name wasn't Irina, she said quietly. It was Vivian, Vivian Callahan. And you gave her that compass 37 years ago in this compound when she was here working with you. Kedrov stood slowly, his body stiff with age and illness. You're her daughter. Yes, she's dead since 1993. Someone killed her, made it look like an accident, but it wasn't. Kedrov's legs gave out. He sat down hard, put his face in his hands. I didn't know, he said, his voice breaking. I looked for her. For decades. I thought she'd forgotten me, that she'd gone back to her life, and I was just a mission to her. You weren't. Reese pulled out the photograph Shaw had given her, the one of Vivian and Kedrov laughing at dinner. She kept this until the day she died. My grandmother showed it to me, said my mother talked about you, about the man who showed her that enemies could be friends. Kedrov took the photograph with trembling hands, stared at it like he was looking at a ghost. Why are you here? He asked. Why now? Because someone tried to kill me 3 weeks ago. Same way they killed my mother. Training accident that wasn't an accident. Reese leaned forward. And I think the person who tried to kill me is connected to the person who killed her. I came here to find the truth about what happened to my mother, about who wanted her dead, and about why someone wants me dead too. Resnick's hand was on his pistol. This is a trick. IAA interrogation technique. But Kedrov raised a hand. No, look at her eyes. Those are Vivian's eyes. He gestured at Reese, and this smile. Vivian smiled like that before she would tell me something I didn't want to hear, before she would challenge me. He stood again, walked to the window, looked out at his empire. I'm dying, he said. Cancer. 6 months, maybe less. He turned back. So I will tell you the truth, all of it, because I owed your mother my life, and I owe her daughter the same. He paused. Your mother came here in 1987, said she was a journalist. But I knew, I always knew, CIA. But I didn't care, because when I looked at her, I saw something I'd never seen in this business. His voice softened. Honor, real honor. Kedrov poured vodka, drank. She was supposed to kill me. Her handler, a man named Ironside, ordered it, but she refused, said I wasn't an enemy, just a man trying to survive. He met Reese's eyes, and she let me live. And someone killed her for it. Yes, because she proved that Americans could show mercy, that wars didn't have to end in blood, and that scared people, people who needed enemies to justify their power. Kedrov walked back to his desk, opened a drawer, pulled out a thick file. I kept records. Everyone who knew about Vivian's mission. Everyone who had reason to want her silenced. I've been investigating her death for over 30 years, since the day I heard she was gone. He handed the file to Reese. Inside was everything. Names, dates, financial records, communications intercepts, evidence that pointed to a conspiracy that stretched from the CIA to the Pentagon to private military contractors. And at the center of it all, Colonel Raymond Mercer, codenamed Ironside. He ordered her death, Kedrov said. What immediately, but when she refused to disappear, when she kept asking questions, when she threatened to expose what she'd learned about illegal operations in Central America. His voice was hard. He had her killed. Reese's hands were shaking. Raymond Mercer's dead. Died in 2010. But his network isn't. His people, his allies. They're still there. Still protecting the secrets. Still cleaning up loose ends. Kedrov's eyes were hard. And when you joined the SEALs, when you started following your mother's path, they decided you were a loose end too. Outside, somewhere in the compound, men were shouting, running, the sound of vehicles starting. Resnick ran to the window, looked out, his face darkened. We have a problem. American military communications. Someone's been signaling. GPS coordinates 5 miles from here. He looked at Reese. Your friends are coming. Kedrov stood. You called them? No, I didn't. Reese's hand went to her ear. The earpiece had been passive. She'd only transmitted once, hours ago. A simple status check. Something's wrong. The compound erupted in chaos. Alarms, shouting, men running to positions. Resnick grabbed Reese's arm. You're coming with me. Wait. But there was no waiting, because through the window, Reese could see the first explosion. The North Guard Tower erupting in a shower of concrete and flame. A shaped charge, precisely placed, perfectly timed. The tower collapsed, taking 3 guards with it. Seconds later, the east wall exploded. Breaching charges. The distinctive crack boom that meant SEALs were coming through. Reese ran to the window, saw muzzle flashes in the jungle, tracer rounds cutting red lines through the darkness. Kedrov's guards returning fire, AK-47s on full auto, undisciplined, spraying lead. Then the SEALs appeared, 4 shadows moving through smoke, suppressed weapons, night vision, every movement precise, coordinated, lethal, done lead, moving in controlled bursts, fire, move, cover, fire again, each shot deliberate. Vance covered left, his movements synchronized with Dunn like they'd done this 1,000 times. Hollister took point with a heavy MG, suppressing entire sectors with controlled bursts that forced Kedrov's men into cover. They weren't there to arrest, they were there to eliminate. And in her earpiece, Reese heard Mercer's voice. Blackbird is compromised. Repeat, Blackbird is compromised. Eliminate target and all witnesses. Make it look like hostile action. Reese's blood ran cold. This wasn't a rescue operation. This was an assassination, and she was supposed to die in the crossfire. Resnick dragged Reese through corridors as gunfire erupted outside. Men shouted in Spanish and Russian. Boots pounded on concrete. Another explosion shook the building. Closer this time. Chunks of ceiling rained down. In here. Resnick shoved her into a storage room. Weapons lined the walls, ammunition crates, radio equipment stacked in corners. He grabbed a radio, barked orders in Russian, commands to fall back. Protect Kedrov. Establish defensive positions. Reese's mind raced. The assault was premature, tactically unsound. Team 9 should have waited for her signal, should have confirmed target location, assessed defenses, planned extraction routes. Unless someone didn't care about her signal, unless someone wanted her dead inside this compound when the shooting started, unless the mission had never been about recovering encryption codes at all. Another explosion, closer. The lights flickered, died, came back on running from emergency generators. The building shook. Resnick turned to Reese. His pistol was in his hand, not aimed at her, not yet. This was the plan all along, he said. You infiltrate. We let our guard down. Your team attacks. Classic CIA operation. No, I didn't call them. I swear. Then who did? Before Reese could answer, the door burst open. A SEAL came through fast and low. M4 up, suppressor attached. Night vision goggles flipped up now that he was indoors. Laser sight painting red dots across the room. He saw Resnick, acquired target, finger moving to trigger. Reese moved. She stepped between them. Hands up, not aggressive, but blocking the shot. Stand down, she shouted in English. Friendly. The SEAL hesitated, recognized her behind the tactical mask. It was Hollister. Lieutenant, his voice was steady but urgent. We're extracting you. Commander's orders. Come with me now. What commander? I didn't call for extraction. Commander Mercer. He initiated mission abort. Said your cover was blown. Said we had 30 minutes to get you out or you'd be executed. Reese's blood ran cold. That's not true. My cover is intact. Kedrov trusts me. And this assault is going to kill him and everyone else in this compound. Orders are orders, ma'am. Behind Reese, Resnick raised his pistol, aimed at Hollister's head. Reese didn't think. She spun, knocked Resnick's arm up. The pistol fired into the ceiling. The shot deafening in the confined space. Plaster and concrete dust rained down. Then she stepped into his guard, trapped his gun hand against his chest, executed a textbook disarm. Wrist lock, pressure point. The pistol clattered to the floor. Resnick stared at her, betrayal in his eyes. You were CIA all along. I am CIA, but I didn't order this, and I'm not leaving until I stop it. She turned to Hollister. Where's Mercer? North side, breaching the main building with Dunn and Vance. Radio him, tell him to cease fire. Tell him I'm ordering mission abort. Ma'am, I can't. That's a direct order, petty officer. Do it now. Hollister hesitated only a second. Then he keyed his radio. Actual, this is Tango 6. I have Blackbird. She's ordering mission abort. Repeat, mission abort. All units cease fire and withdraw. Static, the sound of gunfire in the background. Then Mercer's voice, distorted by combat and distance. Negative, continue assault. Blackbird is compromised. Extract by force if necessary. Reese grabbed the radio from Hollister. Mercer, this is Callahan. I am not compromised. Target package is secure. Kedrov is cooperative. Cease fire immediately or I will report you to JSOC for unauthorized assault on a non-hostile target. More static. Then, you don't understand what's happening, Lieutenant. Your cover was blown the moment you walked into that compound. Kedrov knew who you were. He's been playing you. This whole thing is a trap. That's not true. Then why is he still alive? Why didn't he execute you the moment he figured out you were Vivian Callahan's daughter? Why has he been feeding you exactly what you wanted to hear? Reese had no immediate answer because part of her wondered the same thing. I'm trying to save your life, Mercer continued. His voice was tight with urgency, or something that sounded like it. Now get to the north wall. We're extracting in 5 minutes, with or without you. And if you're not there, you're staying behind permanently. The radio went dead. Reese stood in the middle of chaos, Resnick unarmed on the floor, watching her with calculating eyes. Hollister waiting for orders, torn between loyalty to his commander and what he was seeing with his own eyes, in a choice that would define everything. She could leave, extract with Team 9, return to Coronado, file a report, survive. Or she could stay, try to stop the assault, risk everything for a man who'd once been her country's enemy, for the truth about her mother, for justice that was over 30 years overdue. Her hand went to her pocket, to her mother's compasses, both of them. Her mother had faced this choice, had chosen mercy over orders, and it had cost her everything. Now it was Reese's turn to choose. She looked at Hollister. You're coming with me. We're going to the North Wall, but we're not extracting. Ma'am, we're going to stop Mercer before he kills everyone in this compound. She turned to Resnick, extended her hand to help him up. I need your help. I know you don't trust me, but if we don't stop this assault, Khadrov dies. And everyone else here dies too, including me. Resnick's jaw was tight. His eyes burned with rage and confusion, and something that might have been respect. But he took her hand, let her pull him to his feet. What do you need? Radio, access to your communication network. 3 minutes. Resnick pulled a handheld radio from the wall mount, handed it to her. Reese keyed it, spoke in Russian. All units, this is Khadrov's guest. The American assault was not authorized by their command. It is a rogue operation. Fall back to the main building. Protect Khadrov at all costs. Do not engage American forces unless they fire on you first. I repeat, do not engage unless fired upon. We are working to stop this. She switched to the SEAL frequency. Team 9, this is Callahan. I am invoking operational authority under Directive 7. All personnel are ordered to cease fire and withdraw to the extraction point immediately. Anyone who continues engagement will face court-martial for violation of rules of engagement and unauthorized assault on a cooperative intelligence asset. Directive 7 didn't exist, but it sounded official enough to create doubt, to make Dunn and Vance and the others hesitate, to buy time. The gunfire slackened, not stopped, but slowed, reduced from full assault to cautious engagement. Reese handed the radio to Hollister. Stay here with Resnick, keep communications open. If shooting starts again, call Shaw on the satellite phone. He has the authority to override Mercer. Where are you going? To stop a man from finishing what his father started over 30 years ago. She ran through corridors filled with smoke and confusion, past wounded men being dragged to safety, past bullet holes and blood spatter and the debris of war. The compound was chaos, sound and fury, alarms, shouting, the crack of sporadic gunfire, the rumble of engines. She reached the north wall as Team 9 breached the final security door. Dunn came through first, weapon up, clearing angles with practiced precision. Then Vance, moving in perfect sync. Then 2 more operators, and finally Mercer. He saw her, stopped. They stood 15 feet apart in a corridor lit by emergency lights and the red glow of exit signs. His weapon was up, finger on the trigger. Hers were empty hands. The rest of Team 9 fanned out, covering sectors. But their attention was split now, between the mission and whatever was happening between their commander and their newest team member. You should have left when you had the chance, Mercer said. Your father killed my mother, Reese replied quietly. Didn't he? The words hung in the smoke-filled air. Dunn's weapon lowered slightly. Vance's head turned. Mercer's expression didn't change. But something flickered in his eyes. Something that might have been confirmation, or might have been pain. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Colonel Raymond Mercer, codenamed Ironside. He was her handler in 1987. He ordered her to kill Khadrov. She refused. Reese took a step forward. So in 1988, he tried to kill her. Made it look like a vehicle accident. She survived. But 5 years later, in 1993, he succeeded. Parachute malfunction at Fort Bragg. Except it wasn't a malfunction. Dunn lowered his weapon completely. Commander, stay out of this, Chief. No, sir. Dunn's voice was firm. This has gone far enough. If what she's saying is true, it's not true. But Mercer's voice lacked conviction. Then why did you order this assault 3 days early? Reese took another step forward. Why did you try to kill me at Coronado with live ammunition? Why are you so desperate to stop me from learning the truth? The silence was broken only by distant gunfire and the sound of men shouting in Russian. Mercer's hands were shaking now, his weapon still pointed at Reese, but wavering. "My father was a patriot," he said. His voice was hollow, defensive. "He did what needed to be done. Vivian Callahan compromised a mission. Let an enemy asset live. Put American lives at risk by refusing a direct order. He had no choice. He had every choice, and he chose murder. She was a traitor." The words echoed in the corridor. Mercer's face was twisted now. Years of carrying his father's secret. Years of defending the indefensible. Years of becoming exactly what his father had been. "She was a traitor," he repeated. Quieter. "She fell in love with a Soviet arms dealer. Refused a direct order to eliminate him. My father spent 10 years trying to contain the damage. It destroyed him, killed him." He paused. "And then you joined the teams, started asking questions, following her path. I couldn't let you finish what she started. So you tried to kill me. I tried to protect the mission, the team, the country, my father's legacy. You tried to protect a lie by becoming a murderer, just like him." Reese took another step forward. Mercer's finger tightened on the trigger. "Don't." She took another step, now 10 feet away. "You're not your father, Dalton. You don't have to finish what he started. You can choose differently. You can choose honor over orders, truth over lies. I'm choosing my country over sentiment. Then shoot me, right now, in front of your team, in front of men who've served with you for years. Prove you're willing to kill an unarmed fellow SEAL to protect a dead man's reputation." The silence stretched. Dunn spoke quietly. "Commander, lower your weapon." "That's an order, Chief. Stay out of this." "No, sir, not this time." Dunn stepped forward. Then Vance. Then the other operators. Then Hollister appeared from a side corridor. Resnick beside him, 5 SEALs and 1 Russian former Spetsnaz, all of them facing their commander. All of them choosing what was right over what was easy. Mercer looked at each of them in turn. His team, his brothers, the men he'd led into combat, the men he'd trusted with his life, and they were telling him no. 15 years in the team, sir," Dunn said quietly. "I've seen commanders bend rules, break protocols, but I've never seen one try to kill his own. When that round missed her head by 3 inches at Coronado, I knew something was wrong, so I started keeping insurance." He pulled a small recording device from his vest. "I've been recording since that day, since the live ammunition incident." He pressed play. Mercer's voice, tinny through the small speaker. "The Callahan girl is getting too close. If she goes to Honduras, she'll find out everything. We need to eliminate her before that happens." Another voice. Unknown. Distorted. "Understood. We'll make it look like hostile action during the assault." Mercer's voice again. "Just like we did with her mother." The recording stopped. The corridor was silent except for the sound of men breathing. "That's..." Mercer's voice was barely a whisper. "That's out of context." "No, sir," Dunn said quietly. "That's a confession, and I'm done following orders that dishonor the teams, that dishonor what we're supposed to stand for." He looked at Reese. "Your mother deserved better. You deserve better. And the teams deserve better than commanders who kill their own." Slowly, so slowly, Mercer lowered his rifle. "It's over," Reese said softly. "No." Mercer's voice cracked. "It's not." He reached for his sidearm, but Reese was faster. She'd been waiting for it, expecting it. She closed the distance in 3 steps, trapped his hand before the pistol cleared the holster. Wrist lock, pressure on the ulnar nerve. The same disarm she'd used on Resnick. The same techniques her mother would have known. Mercer's weapon fell to the floor. He stood there, disarmed, defeated, his team watching him. His mission failed. His father's secrets about to be exposed. And Reese smiled, the ghost smile, the one her mother had used, the one that said the fight was over before it began, the one that told the target they had already lost. Mercer saw it, recognized it from his father's notes, from descriptions of Vivian Callahan's legendary technique, and his knees buckled. He sat down hard against the wall, put his face in his hands. "My father was a good man," he whispered. "He served his country for 40 years. "I'm sure he did many good things," Reese said quietly. "But he also killed my mother and tried to teach you that murder was acceptable when orders demanded it. That's not service. That's not honor. That's just murder dressed in a flag." She turned to Dunn. "Get him out of here. Medical evaluation. Psychiatric hold. Secure communications to JSOC. Whatever it takes. But he doesn't leave custody until this is sorted out at the highest levels." Dunn nodded. "Yes, ma'am." He gestured to Vance and the others. "Help me with him." The SEALs gently pulled Mercer to his feet. He didn't resist, just let them guide him toward the extraction point like a sleepwalker. Before they left, Dunn stopped, looked back at Reese. "Thank you, Chief," Reese said, "for choosing honor." Dunn almost smiled. "That's what SEALs do, ma'am. We just forgot for a while." They left, taking Mercer with them, taking the evidence, taking the truth that would finally set everything right. Reese stood alone in the corridor for a moment. Then she walked back through the compound. The shooting had stopped. Kadrov's men were tending to wounded. A few small fires burned, but nothing catastrophic. Casualties were lighter than they could have been, should have been, because Team 9 were professionals. And when they'd received the order to cease fire, they'd ceased fire, even without understanding why, even without confirmation from their commander. Because they'd trusted Reese, and they'd chosen honor over blind obedience. She found Kedrov in his office. He sat at his desk, looking smaller and older than before. Resnick stood beside him, a fresh bandage on his arm. "It's done," she said. "Your people are safe. My people are leaving." "Yes." "And the device, the codes." Reese walked to the desk, to the case containing the Singar's encryption device, the mission objective, the reason officially that she was here. She picked it up. "You could take it," Kedrov said quietly. "Complete your mission. Go home a hero, leave me here to die." "I could, but you won't." "No." Reese set the case back down, sat across from him. "Tell me everything first. Everything that happened after my mother left. Everything you know about who killed her." Kedrov took a shaking breath, and he talked. He told her about the months after Vivian's extraction in December 1987, how he tried to contact her through intermediaries, how the CIA had shut him out completely, how he'd learned years later through his intelligence network that she'd been forced into retirement, threatened, isolated, watched, how in 1988 he'd heard that she'd been in a car accident, serious injuries, and he'd known it wasn't an accident, but he'd been powerless to help from Honduras, how she'd survived, recovered, married an Air Force pilot named Nathan Callahan, had a daughter, how in 1991 her husband had died in combat, and Vivian had been alone again with a 4-year-old child. How in 1993 he'd heard through his network that she'd died, training accident, parachute malfunction. He hadn't believed it for a second. How he'd spent money, favors, years of work trying to find proof that it was murder. That Colonel Raymond Mercer had finally succeeded in silencing her. How he discovered that Mercer had been in charge of her personnel file when she died, had signed off on the training and exercise, had been present at Fort Bragg that day, had personally inspected the parachute equipment afterward, and declared it a tragic malfunction. How the investigation had been cursory, the witnesses reassigned before they could be properly interviewed. The physical evidence disappeared from the evidence locker. The case closed in under 2 weeks. How every avenue Kedrov pursued led back to Raymond Mercer and a network of officers who'd been involved in illegal operations in Central America during the 1980s. Operations that Vivian had known about. Operations that had continued long after the Cold War ended. Operations that were still generating money and power for people who'd built empires on classified budgets and disappeared enemies. I kept everything, Kedrov finished. He pushed a thick folder across the desk. Over 30 years of investigation, witness statements, financial records, communications intercepts, everything, waiting for someone who cared enough to seek justice. Reese opened the folder. Inside was a map of conspiracy that stretched across decades. Names she recognized from Shaw's research. Names from Mercer's father's files. Patterns of corruption and murder. And at the center, proof that Raymond Mercer had ordered Vivian Callahan's death, had arranged the equipment sabotage, had ensured the investigation would fail, had built a wall of silence and fear that had lasted 3 decades. What will you do with it? Kedrov asked. Reese thought about that, about Mercer in custody, about the recording Dunn had made, about files that could finally be reopened, about justice that was over 30 years overdue. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what happened. Who killed her? Why? She paused. I'm going to make sure my mother's name is cleared, that she's remembered not as a traitor, but as someone who chose mercy, who chose honor, who chose to see her enemy as a human being. Kedrov nodded slowly. She would be proud of you. I hope so. The old man stood, walked to his safe, removed the encryption device. Take it. Use it to prove your case. Show that I'm cooperating, that I'm providing intelligence. Maybe it buys me a peaceful death instead of a prison cell. I can arrange that. Witness protection, medical care, a quiet place to spend your final months. All I want, Kedrov said, is to be remembered as something other than a criminal, as someone who loved a good woman, who tried to help her daughter when she came seeking truth. Reese stood, extended her hand. Kedrov shook it. His grip was weak but sincere. Thank you, she said, for loving her, for remembering her, for keeping her memory alive when everyone else wanted her forgotten. Thank you, Kedrov replied, for being like her, for finishing what she couldn't, for showing me that honor still exists, that mercy is still possible, that her sacrifice meant something. His eyes were wet. Tell me, did she ever speak of me after she left? Reese thought about lying, about giving him comfort, but her mother had taught her that truth was more important than comfort. My grandmother said she kept your photograph until the day she died, that sometimes late at night, she would look at it and smile and cry because she'd found something real in the middle of war and she'd had to leave it behind. Kedrov's face crumpled. He turned away, shoulders shaking. That's enough, he whispered. That's more than enough. The extraction happened at dawn. Helicopters came in from the coast. CIA, not military, a sanctioned operation now that JSOC had been briefed, now that the evidence had been transmitted, now that the truth was finally coming out. Shaw was on the lead helicopter. He helped Kedrov aboard personally, gentle, respectful, the way you'd help a wounded veteran, not an enemy combatant. To Reese, he said, your mother would be so damn proud. Reese smiled, not the ghost smile this time, just a daughter's smile. I know. They flew east into the sunrise, away from the jungle, away from the compound, away from secrets and lies and over 30 years of waiting. Reese sat in the helicopter's cargo bay, holding her mother's compasses, watching the jungle disappear below. The mission was complete. The codes were recovered. The conspiracy was exposed. Justice was finally possible. But the weight she felt wasn't relief. It was responsibility. the responsibility of finishing what her mother had started, of proving that mercy was stronger than violence. That honor mattered more than orders. That truth was worth any price. 4 months later, Reese stood at Arlington National Cemetery under gray November skies. The new headstone read, Vivian Callahan, 1957 to 1993. As operations officer, she chose mercy over orders. Shaw stood beside her in dress uniform, his chest heavy with medals earned over 40 years of service. Kedrov passed last week, he said quietly, peacefully. His last words were about her, about how she taught him that enemies could become friends, that mercy was stronger than fear. Reese nodded. She'd expected the news, had visited Kedrov twice during his final months in witness protection, had listened to his stories, his memories, his unending love for a woman who'd shown him grace in a graceless world. What about Mercer, she asked. Discharged, dishonorable. The psychiatric evaluation confirmed paranoia, obsession with protecting his father's legacy at any cost. He'll never serve again. Shaw paused. The investigation into his father's activities is ongoing. They've reopened 14 cases of suspicious deaths among SUDIA personnel between 1985 and 1995. Your mother's case has been reclassified from training accident to murder. Raymond Mercer's posthumous commendations have been revoked. Good. Shaw pulled an envelope from his jacket. One more thing. Your promotion came through, Lieutenant Commander, and you've been reassigned. SEAL Team 3, new team, fresh start. They specifically requested you. Reese took the envelope. Inside were orders and a handwritten note from the team commander. We don't care about history. We care about character. Welcome aboard. She smiled. When do I start? Monday, if you're ready. Reese looked at her mother's grave one last time, at both compasses, her grandmother's and Kedrov's. Now buried with Vivian. She'd honored the words inside. She'd done both, smiled, and won. I'm ready, she said. 3 months after that, Reese stood in front of a BUD/S class at Coronado. Guest lecturer. The students were young, eager, nervous, and 3 of them were women. One raised her hand. Ma'am, how do you deal with people who don't think you belong? Reese thought about everything. Her mother, Kedrov, Mercer, the compound, the choice between orders and honor, the smile that had become a weapon and a shield. You show them, she said, not with words, not with arguments, but with excellence, with character, with the quiet certainty that you belong exactly where you are, that you earned your place through blood and sweat, and refusing to quit when quitting would have been easier. And when they still don't believe? Reese smiled, not the ghost smile of psychological warfare, just a smile of understanding, of experience, of wisdom earned through fire. Then you keep going anyway, because their belief isn't required. Only your excellence is, only your honor, only your commitment to being better today than you were yesterday. She paused. My mother taught me something. She taught me that mercy is strength, that seeing enemies as human beings takes more courage than pulling a trigger, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to become what they expect you to be. Another student raised her hand. What did they expect her to be? A killer, a traitor, a failure. Reese's voice was quiet but firm, but she chose differently. She chose to be something better. And it cost her everything, but it also changed everything. Because over 30 years later, we're standing here, and 3 of you are women. And that wouldn't have been possible without people like her proving that we belong. The students were silent, listening, learning. So when someone tells you that you don't belong, Reese continued, when someone tries to break you or mock you or force you to quit, remember this. You're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for everyone who comes after you, for every person who needs to see that it's possible, That excellence has no gender. That honor knows no boundaries. That courage is available to anyone willing to pay the price. She looked at the three women in the class. And yes, sometimes you'll want to quit. Sometimes you'll be tired and hurt and wondering if it's worth it. In those moments, you have a choice. You can give up or you can smile. Why smile, ma'am? Reese's expression softened. Because the smile tells them and tells yourself that you know something they don't, that you've already decided how this ends, that you're going to finish what you started no matter what they throw at you. The smile is certainty, confidence, proof that you've already won the only battle that matters, the battle against self-doubt. She pulled a small object from her pocket, a compass, new brass, identical to her mother's. She'd had three made, one for herself, one buried with her mother, and one for this moment. She walked to the youngest of the three female candidates, handed it to her. This is a copy of the one my mother carried. She took it through missions that almost killed her, through a career that ended in murder, through choices that cost her everything but gave her honor. Reese's voice was steady. I want you to have it, all three of you. Pass it between you. Let it remind you that others have walked this path, that others have succeeded against worse odds, that you're part of a legacy. The young woman opened the compass, read the inscription inside. When they mock you, smile. When they attack you, win. She looked up at Reese with tears in her eyes. I'll make you proud, ma'am. Make yourself proud, Reese said. That's all that matters. That's all that ever mattered, did. She looked at the entire class, 50 future SEALs, 3 future female SEALs, all of them watching her, listening, learning from a woman who'd walked through fire and come out steel. Earn your trident, she said. Earn it through excellence, through character, through refusing to quit. And when you pin it on, when you join the brotherhood, remember this. She paused. You're not just SEALs. You're the keepers of honor in a dishonorable world. You're proof that courage still exists, that sacrifice still means something, that there are still people willing to die for something bigger than themselves. She snapped to attention, saluted them. They saluted back. And as Reese walked away from the grinder, away from the class, away from the memories of her own Hell Week 3 years ago, she felt something shift inside her. The weight she'd been carrying, her mother's death, the conspiracy, the choice between revenge and justice, it wasn't gone, would never be gone, but it had transformed into something else. Purpose, legacy, honor. Her mother had chosen mercy, had paid the ultimate price for that choice. But she'd also planted seeds, seeds that had grown in the dark for over 30 years, seeds that had finally broken through into sunlight. And now Reese Callahan, daughter, SEAL, keeper of her mother's legacy, would water those seeds, would make sure they grew, would make sure that her mother's sacrifice meant something, would make sure that every person who faced that same choice between orders and honor, between easy and right, between killing and mercy, would know that they weren't alone, that others had walked that path, that courage was possible, that the smile, that legendary ghost smile, wasn't just a weapon, it was a promise that said, I see you trying to break me. I see you trying to force me to become what you want. I see your fear and your hatred and your need to destroy what you don't understand. And I'm smiling because I know something you don't. I've already won, not by destroying you, not by becoming like you, not by letting your hatred make me hateful, but by choosing something better, something higher, something that will outlast your fear and my pain and all of this, by choosing honor.